Imagine being born to rule, but spending most of your life as a captive, caught in a web of political intrigue, betrayal, and ultimately, execution. This is the tragic fate of Mary, Queen of Scots, the woman who lost 3 kingdoms and paid the ultimate price for power. But was she a victim of fate or an architect of her own downfall? To find out, we must explore not just her reign, but the plot that sealed her doom, the infamous Babington Plot. Mary Stuart was born in 1542, the only surviving legitimate child of King James V of Scotland. 6 days later, her father was dead, making her Queen of Scotland before she could even speak. Fearing English ambitions, her guardians sent her to France, where she was raised in the grandeur of the French court and betrothed to the Dauphin Francis. This union promised to bind Scotland and France against England. Mary thrived in France, educated in languages, music, and diplomacy. Unlike the cold, calculating Elizabeth, Mary was charismatic and beloved, but fortune was cruel. Her young husband Francis died of illness in 1560, leaving her widowed at just 18. When Mary returned to Scotland, she found a land fraught with religious strife. Protestant reformers, led by John Knox, despised her Catholic faith and her foreign upbringing. Despite attempts at tolerance, her rule was undermined at every turn. And then, she made a fatal mistake, marrying her cousin, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. Darnley was handsome but arrogant and unstable. What began as a fairy tale union soon turned to terror. Darnley resented Mary's power and, in a fit of jealousy, orchestrated the brutal murder of her secretary, David Rizzio, before her very eyes. Months later, Darnley himself was killed in an explosion, though his strangled body suggested murder. Suspicion fell on Mary and her closest ally, the ambitious Earl of Bothwell. When she married Bothwell soon after, the Scottish nobility turned against her. Overthrown and imprisoned, Mary was forced to abdicate in favor of her infant son, James VI. But Mary would not go quietly. She escaped, raising an army to reclaim her throne. Defeated in battle, she fled to England, seeking the aid of her cousin, Elizabeth I. Mary expected Elizabeth to help her regain the Scottish throne, but instead, she found herself a prisoner. For nearly 2 decades, she languished in English castles, moving from one captivity to another. Yet, even in confinement, she remained a figure of hope for Catholic loyalists who saw her as England's rightful queen. Elizabeth's advisors, particularly Sir Francis Walsingham, viewed her as a threat that had to be neutralized. Then, in 1586, an opportunity arose, or so it seemed. A group of Catholic conspirators, led by Anthony Babington, sought to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the English throne. Babington and his fellow conspirators were brutally executed, hanged, drawn, and quartered. But the real target was Mary. In October 1586, she was brought to trial. Despite arguing that she was a sovereign queen and could not be judged by English law, the verdict was a foregone conclusion. Elizabeth hesitated, knowing that executing another monarch would set a dangerous precedent. But under pressure, she signed Mary's death warrant. On February 8, 1587, Mary was led to the Great Hall at Fotheringhay Castle. She wore a crimson gown, the color of Catholic martyrdom, and carried a rosary in her hands. Her final words were resolute. "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." The first axe blow struck her shoulder. The second severed part of her neck. The third finally took her head, as the executioner lifted it for all to see. Her lips were said to move in prayer. Then, in a macabre twist, her loyal lapdog, hidden in her skirts, emerged, refusing to leave her lifeless body. Mary's death sent shockwaves across Europe. Catholic nations mourned her as a martyr, while Protestants saw justice done. But the irony? Her son, James VI of Scotland, would one day inherit the English throne, uniting the 2 kingdoms. Her story is one of ambition, betrayal, and resilience. A queen who lost everything but never surrendered her royal dignity. Thanks for watching Footsteps of History. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Mary Queen of Scots and the Babington Plot, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story from history's most compelling figures. What do you think? Was Mary a victim of circumstance or the architect of her own downfall? Let us know in the comments below.